This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. Now, the Friday edition of Binghamton Now. It's live. It's local. Local callers, local topics, local guests. 607-772-1290 is our number. Go ahead. Make that call.
WNBF. First News Binghamton. News Radio 1290. WNBF.
It's a big day in our neighborhood, so without any further ado, let's hit those phones, shall we, and see what the viewers have to say. Good morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, sir. Dave from Vestal. How's it going?
It's going perfectly.
Good, good. Glad to hear it, Bob. Bob, pretty exciting news there. October 27th will be wild in Manhattan, Bob. How about that?
Well, I hope they have enough cops. Hope they have enough flex cuffs. Hope they have enough, as they say in the police business, hope they have enough buses.
Bob, especially the way it's being done, first come, first served, it'll basically shut down Manhattan and parts of the city. I mean, it will be crazy, Bob. Bigger than Springsteen or Billy Joel being there. Much bigger. Right? Right.
Well, anybody who wants to be arrested, be prepared. You know, Eric Adams will still be in charge unless he winds up being arrested by then. And hold off, he could be incarcerated before that event happens. But at this rate, I mean, he obviously, we afford him the presumption of innocence.
But they will be, I mean, just in droves. Connecticut, Jersey, PA, most of Long Island, Trump supporters.
The entire tri-state area will be represented.
Yeah, yes, Bob. And we know what I'm hoping, that they drop in, pay their respects, and say hello to like Judge Engron, Tish James, Elvin Bragg. You know, say hi to all the people that, you know, did their best to ruin this guy through politically motivated court systems, Bob. I hope they take the time to say hello to these people when they come in. I really do.
A word of caution to those who plan to participate in the wildness. If you're going to go wilding in Manhattan and trespass on government property, you know the results. You could be subject to arrest, or in perhaps the worst case scenario, could wind up being killed if you're trespassing on government property. So approach the day of wilding with caution.
Well, I've been discussing it with some friends, Bob, and we may be taking a couple trucks. Now, wait, we might have to get involved in this, Bob. And if you'd like to go, let me know.
I'm not going. I have no business down there. I'll go to Manhattan any other day. I'm not going. Of all days to go to the Baked Apple, I'm not going to New York City on that day. When is it?
October 27th, Bob.
Yep. Nope. I'll go there October 26th or 28th. I'm not going to Manhattan on the 27th. Why would I?
If I get in any trouble, Bob, I can count on you getting me out of there, right? Right. I'm here. Well, wait. No, wait. I'm here representing Bob Joseph and WNBF, so you gotta let me go.
Yeah. I can only say, don't say that, because
I know
it's not, as my friend in the town of Union always says, it won't end well.
Yeah, right.
All right. Good luck. Good luck with your planning, and certainly be sure to secure legal representation ahead of time. It's 9:14, WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm John, and I'm in Binghamton today.
Welcome. Welcome to our fine city.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. This Trump event at Madison Square Gardens reminds me of another famous event held in October of 1974 called the Main Event, when Frank Sinatra put on a live concert on ABC, direct from Madison Square Garden, with Howard Cosell announcing. It was the last of the six concerts he did at Madison Square Garden. That sort of was the beginning of his comeback. And as I said before, Trump is the last vaudevillian. One only has to look at Saturday night. Last Saturday night, you had Lee Greenwood singing, and then he brought in his very own Julius LaRosa at the end to sing Ave Maria. So it's interesting how these campaign events, really unscripted, I believe, because he didn't have a script on The Apprentice. He sort of just had an outline, show that he is indeed on the level of Arthur Godfrey or Milton Berle or Bob Hope. And I think in his heart of hearts, Trump always wanted to be a performer. I think maybe if he went to music school instead of the Wharton School, I think he might have been some sort of performer. But he is got political skills that most don't have. But I just want to go back to one thing. Let's go back to January and February, because this is how the media, and by the media I mean Fox, and all these people that couldn't wait to get off the Trump train, interpreted things. Curtis Wheeler, my friend, we've got to move on. This is horrible. All these people, Mike Pence, using essentially what these people like Nikki Haley did and Mike Pence. They ran a warmed-over Jeb Bush campaign against Trump. And it was amazing how Fox News and all these other so-called conservative allies under the Dominion lawsuit or whatever caved, and they tried to convince people that Trump was a thing of the past. And this truly, regardless of the election right now, this truly is a remarkable comeback. And I'm sure if Casey DeSantis had to do it all over again, she wouldn't have goaded using her feminine charms to make the inopportune presidential run for her husband. I mean, these people, how they underestimated this guy is unbelievable to me. It's just a thing. Now, that being said, it's encouraging to see these polls where it's neck and neck. However, if you're going to cheat, then that shows you don't have to cheat by much to win.
Well, it's all intriguing. I forgot about the big Sinatra event in '74.
And if you look at that tape, I think it's available. What's interesting is what New York was. I mean, it was Jackie O, it was Howard Cosell, it was Toots Shores. I mean, it was really a city of personalities, incredible literary, musical personalities, and that's what's lacking now is people with any kind of personality. They sort of become, they're not using any type of skills to project anything different than what they see is already out there. But anyway, I hope it all goes well at Madison Square Garden, and this guy's been a victim of such dirty pool that it's beyond.
Well, I don't think he's a victim.
No,
because to describe him as a victim suggests that he's not a willing participant. This is my take on most of the things involving Donald Trump. Not everything, but most of the things where some people perceive him to be the victim, and maybe I'm the only one who believes this, but I'm inclined to think he actually relishes it, and I actually think in some cases, not everything, but I think in some cases he actually, it's worked out in his view better than anticipated. With every indictment, with the 34 felony counts being convicted, I believe that he actually, and I don't think he'll say this in any interview, even with Hannity, but I believe secretly he likes it. He knows he's not going to spend 1 second behind bars.
Yeah.
So I think, I can't, there is no other person on the planet who immediately comes to mind who I really think is essentially a Teflon person. I think he's virtually a Teflon Don, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's almost, strangely enough, almost in a grudging admiration that there is one person on a planet filled with nearly 8 billion inhabitants who is almost untouchable. Yes, they can indict him, they can harangue him, they can criticize him, they can book him, they can put out his mugshot, and every time they do something that to mere mortals would spell at least the death of their any political aspirations, he gets stronger. I am at a loss to think of anyone else in my lifetime who is in this unique position.
Well, that's certainly true. Bob, I just want to say one other thing. You know, every local government, every local school district has their version of the deep state that control things for their benefit. And I think what's interesting is this town in Indiana, the small town that has been besieged by these illegal migrants, where they're living 25 to a house. I had my own experience with this in California like 50 years ago. There was a guy who was renting out his garage in 3 shifts. He was charging $8 or $10 to sleep in his garage, and he had 50 people in the garage of his home sleeping in shifts. So what I'm getting at is this. There's a housing shortage. Well, how would Binghamton and Broome County feel if these residents went, say, from having 3 or 5 students to 25 migrants in them? This is what's coming, Bob. It's coming as sure as the election is coming. And, the election may not come for all I know. But, this is big stuff where they're – and the system, anybody that's counting on government benefits for even a portion of their retirement, whether it be Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, this is a direct step. They're going to snap this system. Now,
the system's never going to be snapped. Come on, man. We got all the money in the world. If as long as the Chinese government doesn't call in our debt, man, we're good, baby. They need us as much as we need them.
Well, here's how it manifests itself. It manifests itself in the quality of service and the wait times and all the things that are necessary to take care of people that need medical care. But I just find it very distressing to me. And this was always a mystery to me, even from the time of the boat people that came in, and they came in legally, how there was housing and wall-to-wall carpeting and new furniture ready for these people when they arrived. They didn't have to earn it. They didn't have to go to the Salvation Army. They didn't have to pick up Oriental rugs in the trash and steam them out. Everything was waiting for them. And it hurts me, and it should hurt everybody, that people that are born in this country are sleeping under underpasses. They're sleeping on the streets. They're sleeping in cardboard boxes. They're sleeping in their cars.
Sounds like the lyrics to that Neil Young song, Rockin' in the Free World.
Yeah, so it's incredibly distressing that our own people have to go through this humiliation and suffering while people that are walking in, and by the way, my view of deporting, they walked in, we walk them out.
No, we're not going to walk anyone out. Come on, Johnny, come on.
we can have a nice caravan, with all these from Denver, Seattle, New York, all the way over to the border, exactly the way they came, with bayonets right at their back.
That's not the American way. That's not the America I grew up in, John.
Well, it's an America that needs to protect Americans. And if we don't do that, then we're all no good to each other. And we're just allowing this worldview, this toxic new world order, whatever you want to call it, to be placed upon us. And the 666 is right down the road, and the guy that wants it bad is that guy that did incredible damage to humanity, crimes against humanity, Bill Gates.
I was waiting to hear Bill Gates. See, you're just doing that to try to get Bill Gates to call into the show. And, one of these days he will if he gets bored enough.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that Warren Buffett sort of jumped off, and, he's got savvy, that guy. He sort of jumped off the Bill Gates train.
Yeah. By the way, just since you brought it up about the Sinatra, the main event TV program, the 50th anniversary of that is this Sunday. It was televised by the American broadcasting companies before they became part of Walt Disney. It was October 13th, 1974.
Well, here's my prediction. That same fella or another guy at the end of this is going to sing My Way.
All right. Thank you. I can't believe we'll have to. By the way, as John suggested, the video of that Sinatra special going back, it was a Sunday night 50 years ago, October 13th. The special documents a concert given by Sinatra at MSG, Madison Square Garden, New York City, in which he is accompanied by the Woody Herman Band and introduced by the beloved Howard Cosell. Remember Howard Cosell? Everyone had an opinion about Mr. Cosell and his hair. The concert that was broadcast was the last of a series of 6 that Sinatra gave at Madison Square Garden in October 1974. It says the audio from the concerts also was recorded. Highlights were released as part of an album. And, there were, actually there still are some of the videos on YouTube. So maybe that's what I'll be watching this Sunday night instead of 60 Minutes. Unless Leslie Stahl's on, then I guess I'll have to watch that, see how many questions she repeats. It's 9:28. Coming up next, we're going to talk about something very special. If you love history and if you love one-room schoolhouses, we have a very special segment coming up next, including something that's going to happen this Sunday afternoon that many of you may want to attend. So pay attention. I'm Bob Joseph. You're listening to Binghamton Now on News Radio WNBF 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. News Radio WNBF, WNBF.com. It's 9:30. I'm Bob Joseph. We'll be taking more phone calls coming up in a few minutes. We're joined now in the studio by Vincent Hawley and Dan Hawley. And gentlemen, welcome to WNBF.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
And I've been looking forward to talking about this topic for quite a while now. And it's nice that this all worked out pretty much on relatively short notice. Vincent Hawley, you're now, I believe, living in Johnson City.
Right.
And formerly from Appalachian.
For 61 years.
Many years. And Dan Hawley, I believe you now are living in California.
Yes, I'm out of San Diego, but grew up in Appalachian.
Yep. So it's great to have you both in the studio. And the reason is to talk about a very, very special school, the Richmond Hill School in Susquehanna County. And I had been apprised of this project about this one-room schoolhouse some time ago. And now, this weekend, there's going to be an open house and a special event that's going to happen on Sunday. And so it's nice that we have this opportunity to tell our listeners a little bit about the history of this very special schoolhouse. So, I'll leave it, Mr. Hawley, as in Vince Hawley. I'm going to ask you to start us off a little bit with the background about this schoolhouse. It's not that far away from Appalachian and Vestal. It's just really a few minutes into Pennsylvania.
Just a little bit past Silver Lake, which most people know. This school was the first school in Silver Lake Township, founded in about 1840. The present building is about 1862. It was in use from 1840 up to 1942. I am probably the last living person that went to the school. I'm not sure of that, but so that makes me a historic monument too. So, one-room country schools were just everybody up until 1920. The country was more rural than urban, and the one-room country school was the center of not only educational activity. It was a community center. It was the only place a kid lived on a farm got to meet other kids their own age. So it was a big deal.
So it could be the source of course, education, but also an opportunity to socialize and, to an extent, I'm sure, even be entertained. I mean, to get outside the environment that otherwise that your world typically consisted of. This was, as they say, this is before TV and before the internet and before people had access and traveled all around pretty much at the drop of the hat. You spent, I'm sure, probably about 98% of your time, if it wasn't.
Roads were atrocious.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid, they were atrocious. So in the wintertime, you really didn't get out. And there's lots of stories. I did a history on the thing. And,
you did an extensive history.
Yes.
A remarkably detailed history, and I've been fascinated by the work you did. Clearly that was a labor of love. But, by the way, what prompted you to start that? Because this was part of a process that it's not something you just decided to do one day and said, okay, I'll spend a couple of days on this. You put your heart and soul into this.
The building was on our farm. The school lot was on our farm. And when they sold off the schools, my father and brother bought the school just so you wouldn't get a hunting cabin there. And it was basically used for nothing but storage for 40 or 50 years. Then my oldest brother decided we've got to do something, and he died, unfortunately. And his wife says, well, you ought to take up where he left off. And to be very honest, I thought I'd burn the thing down. And I got out there and just kind of got sucked into it. It took me 4 or 5 years to clean the building up. I got very particular on what I did. There's nothing in there that's newer than 1942.
It's remarkable. So everything in there is at least 8 decades old.
And one thing I did do, most of the schools you went into, the desks are shiny and they look pretty. I found the oldest ones with the initials carved in them, like in the real school.
Oh, that's wonderful. Tell our listeners, describe the schoolhouse physically as far as size and generally paint sort of a word picture.
It's about 20 by 30, 10-foot ceilings, Dutch lap siding on the outside, never had electricity, never had running water, and never had central heat, so has a stove in there. And we got it we had a great picture of 1932 of the kids in the school. So use that as the the driving force, but then didn't want it to be 1932 only, so looked at some history of what schools looked like in the old days. So half of it looks like schools looked up until maybe World War or after the Civil War, and then the rest of it like it was in the end. And it never really changed a whole lot between the time, we'll say, in World War I and when I got out of it.
How old were you when you first set foot inside the schoolhouse?
5. Well, I was probably 2 or 3, but 5. I was not one of those people who walked up and killed the school both ways. I was only a couple hundred yards down the road, so we used to go down and break in every now and then just to check things out.
Tell me about the way the instruction was conducted, because I've always been fascinated to try to imagine learning, as well as from a teacher's standpoint, trying to instruct children of different ages in a one-room schoolhouse.
Well, there were 8, 1 through grade 8, but like we only had 12 kids when I was there. You didn't have a kid in every grade, so it really broke down. If you had a first and second grader, they got instructed as a group, second, third, so on. To come in the morning, maybe the teacher would start with the first and second graders doing some teaching. She would assign the next group work on the blackboard, and another group to do some reading and through the day. And then sometimes, if there was a pretty good 7th or 8th grader, she would send them down to teach the first and second graders while she was teaching the kid. And the other thing is, if you went 8 years, you didn't need much instruction in 8th grade. You'd heard it all these years. It pretty much sunk in.
I was going to say, repetition really helps.
Yeah.
You know, if you hear something once or twice, maybe you'll retain some of it. But if you hear things 3, 4, or more times, it's likely to pretty much be imprinted in your gray matter.
Right.
Who was your teacher?
Mary Ellen Conboy for 3 years. And I have to tell this, and it isn't a racial thing, but it's always amazed me. We were all Irish Catholic in this school. And the last year there, our Irish Catholic school board hired a Jewish teacher. And it is amazing. Why would they do that? And why did she come? And it was really great and a good experience. And fun. I thought, wow, we're getting these days off for the Jewish holidays, which we didn't know anything about. And we were kind of bragging to the other kids about it. Except came in May, we had to go 3 Saturdays to make up for the Jewish holidays.
So there's always going to be...
There's always a penalty.
Things will balance out in the long run. By the way, I'm looking at, as part of the documentation you put together about the history, there's also a showing of your attendance record. Apparently, when you're in 3rd grade, you and your brother had... Perfect attendance. From January 2nd, 1941 to May 30th, 1942. Perfect attendance. How did you guys pull that off?
What are you going to do? You're not going to sit home and watch TV? There was none.
And you're not sitting home with your phone watching TikTok videos.
I mean, the most exciting thing you could do is be with other kids.
Yeah. Well, hey, as I said, yes, go to school to be educated, but also to be informed and I'm sure in some ways amused. Absolutely. So Dan Hawley, tell me a bit about the work that you've done, because the biggest thing that has happened recently is this one-room schoolhouse has now been placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And that sort of designation doesn't come easily, and it certainly doesn't happen quickly.
Yes, so I did the paperwork for the National Registry. 1 year from the first paperwork landing there, but basically a 2-year process. I filed for some lower markers and stuff. It's very hard to get a one-room schoolhouse approved. So it's the 9th approval for Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, first in Silver Lake Township. So most of your time is spent with the state historic office, who comes up and visits, takes pictures. So I had about 60 pages submitted, which they eventually dropped down to 34 when it went to the National Park Service. So it was unanimously approved by Harrisburg, and then the National Park Service approved it. So it's a very long process, and it involves a lot more than the building. So you have to have other categories to relate it to history. So I kind of associated 3 presidents with it. They were pretty distant. The founder of the Mormons, William Penn, the grandson of the first William Penn. He was on the original deed. So I dropped a lot of name dropping there to try to make sure that they couldn't disapprove it. So.
And when did you finally learn that the application, the designation, had been approved?
So it was approved September 9th, so last month.
Just over a month ago.
Right, and they had 45 days when it goes from the state to national. They have 45 days, so they did it at about 50 days. Approved it.
So how did you find out? Email?
I got an email from the Harrisburg Historical Society, but also on the webpage from National, they put it up. And we were going through the process with the Philadelphia Cream Cheese House. So I kind of thought that was a good ally to have, and they weren't going to vote down Pennsylvania Philadelphia cream cheese, and we could kind of tag along with them. So
you found out. What's the first thing you did? Call your dad?
Well, I sent him an email, and he quickly responded. So I was fairly confident I was going to make it, but out of the 16 the state presented, only 6 made it.
So it was not a sure thing.
No,
it's not where they just get applications, take a quick look. Yeah, everybody looks like they put forward a decent application, then rubber stamp it. It's clearly right. a challenging process.
And I did all the paperwork myself. A lot of places have consultants and stuff, so I really didn't know what I was doing. And when I went to Harrisburg, there were big groups there and people with $1 million grants, and I was just kind of the little guy. But
I'm impressed to hear that. Right. I'm impressed that an individual working on his own without any real prior experience to even perhaps know what you're up against.
Right. There's a lot of guidance online from the National Park Service, but there's 100 consultants listed in the state of Pennsylvania. So
tell us about this Sunday. There's going to be an open house and certainly a very special moment early on Sunday afternoon at the special schoolhouse.
So tomorrow on Sunday at the Silver Lake Schoolhouse, known as Richmond Hill School, through the paperwork I used Silver Lake number 1. It was the first schoolhouse. I wanted to sound more impressive. So we're having an open house tomorrow, 1340 Wilkes-Barre Turnpike.
We should say it's Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, today's Friday as we speak. Yep.
I'm from the West Coast.
Yep. Still probably a little, and getting reacclimated to Eastern time.
So Sunday we're going to have an open house from 9 till 5, and then at 1 o'clock we're going to do the unveiling of the plaque. It's just a generic historic plaque. I didn't have time to get anything with the name on it. Wanted to get it in from before it snowed. So that'll be 1 o'clock on Sunday, and the place will be open from 9 to 5, so anybody can walk in at any time.
Now, it isn't that far from the Triple Cities area. If people want to try to locate this, I'm sure now thanks to our 21st century technology, if you punch in, and I did this as soon as I received all the information a few weeks ago. Yeah, you punch in, and I've got the directions. I could find it right now thanks to my phone. What address can they punch in to use their, whether it's a Google map or their GPS?
1340 Wilkes-Barre Turnpike, which falls under Montrose, but it's in Silver Lake, and it comes up on Google and all the other maps. And I'm trying to remember what the zip code was, but
18801.
Right, so 18801. So.
Yep, 1340 Wilkes-Barre Turnpike, Montrose, 18801. And you punch that into your device and you can find it. You both must be very, very happy about this.
Yes, it was a long process.
Not only for us, people have a lot of interest in some of the older folks. They're starting to look into their history and found out somebody they were related to went to a one-room country schoolhouse someplace. So this is kind of a representation of a bigger thing.
And a lot of the submission was for a representative of the public school system of the state of Pennsylvania. So it basically represents the whole county of Susquehanna.
Well, sounds like a very special celebration, not only for the Hawley family, but for anybody who has an interest in history in our region and going to the Richmond Hill School. And again, the open house will be on Sunday and the dedication will be at 1 p.m. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Vince Hawley, Dan Hawley, it's been a pleasure. I also want to acknowledge the assistance of Maureen Hawley, your daughter and sister, who kept me apprised about this process. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
It's 9:48. You're listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. On a Friday morning, it's 9:53 with Bob Joseph. 607-772-1290 is our number. And we have more information coming your way. So if you enjoy being informed, this is your radio station and your program. Let's take another call. Good morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Thank you, sir. My name is Colin.
Hi, where are you calling from?
Right now, Endicott, New York.
What's on your mind?
Oh, you were talking about things that were happening, gas prices. Do you realize that they had excuse me, I think was the Chanel saying they're shipping out natural gas? Are you listening?
Intently.
Oh, good. Because the price of natural gas is expanding terribly, but they're making 4 or possibly 4 to 6 prices shipping it out of this country. What's your feeling?
That's called the way the marketplace works. That's the way. That's called capitalism.
No, that's called taking the American people for a ride.
No, it's called our system. If you don't like our system, you'll have to go to a different country because we're not about to change our system now.
And the people that gave up their land are now getting anything or nothing. It's like paying $25 an hour and they're making $1,000 an hour.
Well, that's how business works. Business always pays the people who do most of the work, who supply the labor, the least amount possible so they can have exorbitant profits. That's how the system is set up.
So you believe in that?
Doesn't make any difference what I believe. I didn't start the system. I can't change the system. It is the system. The system won't change.
So what would you do?
I'm going to continue to work within the system. This is what we have. It's like, say, with the Super Bowl. Somebody in the Super Bowl might not like the rules, but he doesn't get to say anything about the rules. The rules are established, and so you play the game with the rules as they are. If you think you know how to change the rules of the game, good luck. You can't change the rules. I can't change the rules. We play the game according to the rules that are set for us.
Bob, that's absurd. they are taking the American people for a ride.
Who? Name who they are. Don't just say faceless, anonymous people. Give me an example of one person who's taking you for a ride.
It's called the corporate.
Yeah, and the corporate's always been here for my life and your life. It was that way before. It was that way before we arrived, and it's going to be that way after we leave.
So you believe that?
Yeah, I believe it. I wouldn't tell you that if it wasn't true. That's the truth, man. Appreciate your call. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, you don't have to like it. It's how the game is played, man. I didn't set the rules. It's the way it is. It's 9:58. This is Bob Joseph live on WNBF. We welcome to our studio David Merlin. Describe yourself, Mr. Merlin. Are you a magician? Are you an illusionist? What exactly are you?
And most people call me a paranormalist because I do on a show that is theater of the paranormal mind. It's composed of mind-reading predictions as well as grand-scale illusions.
You may be the very first paranormalist ever on this program.
I probably am.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us this morning. You're going to be performing this weekend in Binghamton, and I'm glad that you have a chance to introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll tell people about your shows that are going to be taking place tomorrow at the Tri-Cities Opera Center on Clinton Street in Binghamton's First Ward. So, explain. A paranormalist, I wish I really knew more about it. I've read a little bit of what you do, and it intrigues me, but I have to admit I don't really understand.
Well, I started my career in close-up magic, and then it evolved into grand-scale illusions. I almost went to worked with David Copperfield at one point, but declined because of the agreement I was going to have to sign. It was what's the word for it? Non-compete contract.
Yeah.
And it was pretty long, so I declined on that. I actually helped pitch the Wizarding World of Harry Potter to Universal Studios many years ago. Helped a producer do that, and now it's one of the biggest theme parks in the world. I'm a special effects creator, magician, illusionist. I build all my own props. And I would say about a decade ago, I got into the mentalism aspect of magic. And so my show is comprised of mind reading and predictions. And also in my show, for the first time, I'm going to be having 4 people this weekend read my mind in one of the segments. I'm teaching telepathy to the audience.
Oh, my gosh. Is it hard? Is it a skill that is hard to teach to people? I mean, could you teach me?
It's possible.
Okay, I'm not asking to be taught yet, but I'm going to get your contact information for future reference, so don't be surprised. Bob from Binghamton wants to finally, after considering, after contemplating what it all could mean for my life, I may contact you at some point in the future.
But I'd definitely like to do a little demonstration of mind reading with you this morning that you can just tell the audience what's happening.
Okay.
So
has any of the, by the way, for benefit of our listeners and the viewers at home who are viewing it and looking at the radio thanks to WNBF Plus, so just assure our listeners we haven't rehearsed anything. We haven't discussed. You just came into the studio a few minutes ago.
We've never met before.
Nope.
I'm from the state of Alabama. I'm from Jim Neighbor's hometown, Gomer Pyle.
Really?
Sylacauga, Alabama. Yep. My mom was really close friends with his sister. And our town is the only place on earth a person has been struck by a meteorite. And we mine the whitest, purest marble in the world. And it's a town of about 13,000.
Now I want to return to Alabama. I've been to Alabama once in my life, and I loved it. Now I want to return. I'm putting that on my list of places to go.
Yeah, we have Bluebell ice cream there and a Bluebell parlor. So if you like ice cream, that's a great.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Sold.
Yeah.
I'm going to book my tickets. Or ticket. All right. Again, you are going to do a demonstration now, and of course, this is live radio. Of course, I'm apprehensive. Of course, I'm worried.
I'm going to let Crystal. She works with the organization that we're going to be doing the show for,
and this is the YWCA of Binghamton. And by the way, that's the thing. The proceeds for the performances tomorrow will go to the YWCA Binghamton. So, Crystal, okay.
She's laid out a whole bunch of magazines over there, and I want you just at random to choose one of those magazines. Just the one that kind of jumps out at you. Just
grab it?
Yeah, just grab it. Okay, you've got one. She'll take the rest away.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, what I want you to do, and I'm on the other side of this desk here in the studio, so I can't really see what he's doing. I want you to just flip through the magazine, and I want you to stop on a page that has maybe a big story in there. Just anywhere in that magazine, just find one of the stories at random.
I picked out a good magazine.
Let's see, have you come to a page yet?
I have. Yes, I have.
Okay.
This is. I shouldn't tell you. It's
okay. Don't tell me anything.
This isn't the story about Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Okay. I've selected a page.
So what I want you to do is I want you to just at random drop your finger down into the story and stop on a paragraph that just jumps at you, and you just make a quick decision.
All right.
And now, in that paragraph, I want you to find a word, not a small word, not a simple word, but a good word, like a big word, like a word that's maybe 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 letters, something big, something that...
I have found the word. I've chosen my word.
Okay, something that I would never in a million years think of right off the bat. Okay, so that word that you've chosen, I want you to really memorize it in your mind. Mm-hmm. Get it in your mind. Okay, I'm starting to see it's a big word, yes?
It's a fairly big word.
Okay.
Multi-syllable.
Okay, but there's I'm seeing a word in front of your big word. There's a word in front of it that's a small word, yes?
As a matter of fact, yes.
Okay, it's this word is less than 5 letters, yes?
Correct.
And to be more specific, this word is 2 letters, yes?
Absolutely.
I'm seeing something circular. Is one of the letters the letter O?
Yes.
Could you tell all the listeners at home that 2-letter word?
O-H.
Now, I know that might seem semi-impressive to you, but you chose a really big word.
Quite big.
A really big word. And this word, there are 26 letters in the alphabet, so it's really important I get the first letter right. I'm seeing in my mind I'm seeing the letter I, yes?
Correct.
This word, I want you to really think of it, is I'm seeing something. Does it almost have to do with something to do with could almost be part of a holiday in a way.
Very much so.
Yeah, and I'm seeing like the American flag almost.
Yeah.
And in a yes or no answer, is the word that you are thinking of independence?
Yes.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And Crystal will collect your magazine.
All right, Crystal, please take this magazine. By the way, I've never seen the magazine before. Neighbors, a publication of the Alabama Farmers Federation. And look, a couple of kids on their family's farm with a couple of pigs. Porky and Bobby. So how did you do that? I mean, you haven't been in the studio long enough to set up spy cams or anything.
it's taken many years to evolve to this degree. And if you come to the show, you're going to see things like that. And I'm going to do one demonstration where I actually read 3 minds at one time, going back and forth. And that's never been done by any mentalist in the world. That's a very difficult one. And then, like I said, I'm also going to, for the first time, get 4 people, and they are going to read my mind. So that's one of the experiments. And on Saturday night, for people that are into the paranormal and to the subject of ghosts, we are going to try to do a mass seance live on stage for the first time and actually conjure an apparition.
But that sounds scary. I mean, it's intriguing, but it also sounds scary. I don't know if I've seen a lot in my life, but...
Well, there's safety in numbers, so the more people there, the safer you are.
Bring my group, my support network, the people I usually hang out with on Tuesdays. We'll have a special gathering on Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely.
To support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. During the 2:00 show, we're not going to do the seance, but definitely that night we are. And I'm going to do things like, you're going to get to see some eye candy illusion. I'm going to split myself in half, only 10 feet in front of you. I'm going to self-levitate right in front of you. And if we get maybe some kids there, I'm going to levitate one of them from the audience.
Wow.
So some of these are a first. So it's an amazing experience. I've been on shows like America's Got Talent and, Letterman, Penn and Teller's Fool Us. So if you're fans of those shows, you're going to enjoy it. But this is something much more. It's not just card tricks like what you see. It's nothing like that. This is theater of the mind and grand scale illusion all mixed together. So it's kind of a show in which you've never seen before. It's very different from the standard David Copperfield, Siegfried and Roy type thing.
When did you start performing and doing these types of things for public consumption? Well, first, did you start with family and friends?
Well, when I was growing up, I was actually a professional musician growing up. I started playing instruments when I was, 12 years old. Played drums, played guitars, and played in bands. And then the art of magic just kind of happened by accident through a friend. And it's just like I fell in love with the art, and I progressed really, really quickly with it. And before you know it, a few years later, I found myself living in California and being on the Late Show with David Letterman. So just coming from a small town, you don't picture that in your mind that could happen. And then all of a sudden you're there in the Ed Sullivan Theater and you're like, how did I get here? And then you're working with people, like in Hollywood, like Dan Aykroyd and John Goodman and all these people. And you're sitting in green rooms with people you grew up watching. So it was kind of surreal.
That's a remarkable story. By the way, I'm just impressed. I'm not sure. At this point, I'm not sure what to think about what you just did. I mean, because I haven't participated in that kind of a demonstration before on or off radio. And I'm thinking like, well, we didn't. If I was listening on the radio, I'd say, well, yeah, we know Bob, so obviously he probably rigged this, because that sounds like something he would do just for Friday entertainment purposes, but it's not rigged.
Right.
Crystal, over's that mic, Crystal Sackett from YWCA. We didn't rig any of this.
No.
The only thing that we did is a few weeks ago, you said David Merlin would be in town for a couple of performances in October, and can we have time on the show? We didn't discuss anything about it. Yeah.
Matter of fact, I don't even think I told you he was going to bring anything to demonstrate.
No, it was all a surprise. Yeah. And right before, the only thing that I did in terms of getting briefed was checking out 2 stories, one from News 34, the other from Fox 40, just to see, essentially how they reported it ahead of the shows on Saturday. So there was no prep. And so I'm just like standing here like,
Well,
as Dave Letterman would say, like a dumb guy. I'm just like the dumb guy standing here slack-jawed, not really knowing what to say.
You know what you need to do? You need to come to the show and see more of it, because he will. When I seen him a year ago, I was so impressed. I'm like, we've got to bring him to Binghamton. So I'm telling you, if you want to see an amazing show, come out 2 o'clock, come out 7 o'clock. You're not going to be disappointed, and it's something that Binghamton has never seen before. So, like I said, Bob, you're going to have to come out and just be more amazed.
All right. I'll have to bring my friends, my support network.
Yeah, and in my show, you go to some of these just standard magic shows. The magician has these lovely assistants that come out on stage. I don't do that. Everything in my show happens to me and happens to the audience members. It's all 100% spontaneous. So every show is going to be a little bit different.
That's kind of like this program, except more interesting. I mean, this program is 100% spontaneous, and I have no assistant, lovely or otherwise. It's all every day is a new adventure, which I love.
That's the fun about. That's the fun thing about it. When you try to plan things, it's never as good if you just do it right off the cuff.
Especially now in this era where everything, even TV live shots, seem to be. Well, in fact, most are pre-scripted and they feel sanitized. Oh, we're live on the scene of something that happened 6 hours ago, so I had time to, do the script, and so it's all been pre-scripted. There's just in life in general, there's a lack of spontaneity. It feels like everything's scripted, and within 6 months, everything will be taken over by AI. So having something that's truly spontaneous, where you don't know what's going to happen or exactly what to expect next. I think these are precious moments.
Yeah, everything nowadays is staged. All these television shows, all the reality shows, they're staged. They're scripted. None of this stuff's real. America's Got Talent, to a degree, that stuff is scripted. There's a lot of predetermined things that happens on these shows. And I've been in the business for a while, did a lot of television shows, and you come in there thinking one thing, and then you're signing these contracts that they can take anything out of context.
Do whatever they want, and anytime they want, and you sign over all your rights. One thing that I really enjoyed with all the tapings of Letterman's show over the years was it was always 99.9% of the time, taping would start at 5:30, and they would not stop unless there was a major technical snafu. But usually, they would go from 5:30 to 6:32 p.m. And what happened. Yeah, some things were scripted, and obviously portions of Letterman's stand-up on cue cards. But he had so much fun with things that, if something went wrong in the studio, or, if the monkey cam failed or whatever, he would roll with it. And that was one of the things that I thought was special about that show, even though it was recorded 6 hours or 7 hours ahead of broadcast, it still had that spontaneous feel.
Yeah, he was really good at improv. He could think so quickly. He's a different kind of guy.
Yes, he's different, and some people loved him. I happen to love that, but some people really were rubbed the wrong way with his attitude.
Yeah, I mean, he just had a sarcasm about it, and you just have to get him,
Well, this show show typically worked on multiple levels, sometimes 2 or 3 levels, and so the average viewer who was sitting there, drinking his Keystone Light or whatever, or Miller Light, could get it, and then for the more sophisticated crowd, they could understand that. Yeah, there are some things that are somewhat nuanced.
Yeah, I love the Letterman show. I love the Leno show. They were both different.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah.
David Merlin, thank you for being with us. And Crystal,
my pleasure.
For people who want information about getting tickets for the performances tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow night?
Absolutely. You're going to want to go to ywcabinghamton.org, go right under events. You'll see David Merlin's picture. Click on it, and you can purchase your tickets. And right now, until noon tomorrow, you can buy one, get one half off. So it's a great deal. That's off student pricing, children's pricing, and adults. So don't want to miss it.
And again, the website.
ywcabinghamton.org.
And you can also go to my website and see some videos on davidmerlin.com.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for having us.
I wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep. Have a great day and a couple of great shows. It's 10:30. This is WNBF Binghamton. I'm Bob Joseph. We'll be taking your calls next at 607-772-1290. Gary from Binghamton's West Side, you're on the air.
That's a great segue, Bob. You always do well with those. I'd like to talk about WWNC 570 AM in Asheville, North Carolina. So, they had the hurricane come through there and pretty much devastate the area. They're up in the mountains. They don't expect any type of flooding like this, but they got it. No cell service, no nothing. The only lifeline, the only help was the AM radio at that time. From what I understand, 88 million people listen to AM radio every month. And this was definitely a lifeline for those people. They didn't know where, they would be setting up where you could get water or food or anything like that. And the AM radio got it all out there for them. It's been a help for them up there. It really helped a lot of people get services that they needed. I was surprised. You're talking about a huge antenna that survived the hurricane winds.
Well, it's remarkable. That story was presented last night on the CBS Evening News.
I saw that. That's what made me think of it.
And I saw the tease at the start of the show at 6:30, and so I had to look up, because as soon as they mentioned something to the effect, these people in a small town in North Carolina used an AM radio station basically as their lifeline. And I thought, wait a second. That's a story that they put in the lineup specifically for me. Nora O'Donnell must have known that I'd be watching last night. I did a search, and I came up with a great story that was in the Asheville Citizen-Times. The reporter Sarah Honosky basically did a very good piece. By the way, I would encourage you to look it up. The newspaper story: Helene trapped Asheville broadcasters in their station. They've stayed on air ever since. And so that story goes into even further depth than the CBS feature did last night. So even before the CBS feature aired, I tweeted the story from the Asheville newspaper, the Citizen-Times, and then after that piece aired on the CBS Evening News, I tweeted that package, which by network news standards went on quite a while, a little over 3 minutes. And as I put above the CBS piece, I wrote heartbreaking and heartwarming, and a quote from one of the people who was on the radio, quote, "This is the realest radio has ever been." And he hit the nail right on the head. That was, I have to say, and a lot of this probably is a result of my very, very specific interest in AM radio. That particular piece actually brought tears to my eyes, even though it was relatively short, just over 3 minutes. But it also made me smile, too. There were components there of real sadness and loss and tragedy, where they mentioned that the guy who had called in, the couple,
with the grandson,
with their grandson, 7-year-old grandson, and when he called the station, he said, "We're up on the roof, and my Ram truck, I think, had been swept away." And as radio people try to do in a situation like that, the person at the studio basically offered words of assurance. Basically, you'll be okay. But it turned out they weren't okay. They died. They were swept away. The couple and their 7-year-old grandson died. And so it was certainly brought tears to the eyes of the guy from the station, and even brought tears to my eyes, even now talking about it, because it was true loss, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. But then, also as part of that package on the CBS Evening News, the radio host's wife called in.
Well, he didn't know where she was.
He had no idea.
Heard from her.
He had not heard from her. And so she called her husband live on the radio to let him know she was okay.
It was a great piece. It
was an excellent piece. And
I had them same emotions, the up, the down, and then the up.
Well, and even now, just talking about it.
Sure, yeah.
And over the years, look, I've been on this station for a long time, and I know the power of radio, the power of AM 1290. And I know how much our listeners rely on us in good times and in bad times. And that story, the CBS Evening News story, along with the newspaper story from the Asheville Citizen-Times, just helped to reinforce that there is still, in 2024, a real reason why radio stations work hard to serve our communities.
Yeah, I mean, who would think that you would be without cell phone service, and you don't know where to go. You turn the TV on, and I guess there would be some information there too if you could get it, and because you don't have cable, you don't have any of that, no streaming, none of that stuff. So if you've got over the air, you can catch the TV.
Maybe,
but, maybe right. Exactly.
I mean, you never know. I mean, AM radio stations tend to be more resilient than some newfangled technologies. I'm not against newfangled technology. I use the latest in technology and streaming services and anything that my overpriced phone can access. I use it every day, and I also still use AM radio.
It made me think too, Bob, about, Broome County says they have this vehicle that'll go to any, site that needs help, and, that's their main hub, and, all the communications will come out of there and stuff like that. If you don't have internet, is that truck still going to work here in Broome County?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that.
Sadly, someday we may find out, and I hope it works.
And we'll be listening to you, and you'll be giving us what we should do, where we should go, and all of that.
Well, we've been in that position before.
That's true, we have.
And we're here.
I just want...
One of the things, though, and you look at technology and you look at trends, and I think one thing that this country, in terms of communications policy, made a serious mistake with was allowing our system, a highly reliable, dependable system of copper wire phones, landline, to basically be dismantled. And I think we're going to rue the day that that state and federal regulators didn't mandate that phone companies keep their landline system in place for a backup for the time inevitably when something is going to happen with our cell phones, whether it's regionally or nationally or globally. And we have seen the warning signs even in just the last few weeks where there are inexplicable outages, where Verizon can have a widespread outage and never explain publicly what happened or what they're intending to do to see to it that it doesn't happen again. And we've seen some 911 outages, multi-state 911 outages over the past year with no explanation. So some people say, well, software issues, or they were doing an upgrade or something. Well, yes, things are always going to happen, but what happens at some point when 300 million Americans can't call each other, whether it's just to reassure their relatives or friends that they're okay, or they can't call to report a car crash or a crime in progress? What happens then?
I don't know. But, Bob, landlines are still in use.
Well, they are to an extent, but just barely. And existing companies. Well, yes,
if you want
but
one, you can have one. I could have one.
I cannot, as far as I know, and if somebody in the industry or some listener knows for sure, I don't think I can order a new traditional landline. So if I want in my home, I don't have a landline in my home, should, but I don't. If I wanted to order a new traditional copper wire landline, I don't think it's possible. They're not doing new installs. They do have.
Doesn't make money.
Well, no. And they also have, there's a system, and Verizon has been doing this over, I'd say, the last decade or so. Gradually, those who still insist on having a landline. So you have a landline. Who is operating who is your provider for your landline?
No, sir, I do not. Have
okay.
A landline. I did stay at a hotel this past week where there were landlines in the room. I couldn't believe it.
But you don't even know if that's copper wire. There's a very strong, there's a wire
and a dial tone.
In the hotel room. But you don't know if that's connected to a traditional copper wire network, may or may not be. I mean, Verizon and other big companies have been shifting their traditional landline service over to some, I can't remember what it's called, but some sort of basic hybrid service. So if you want something that's a traditional landline that would work almost always, even when the power went out, good luck with that. A lot of these systems are still now reliant, whether you know it or not, on a working internet service. So, you may have a wire. Some people, I've got a phone there in my kitchen, and I got a dial tone. Well, you might want to check. Because it might not be the phone system you grew up with. Remember when you were growing up, the phones almost always worked. Power failures or whatever.
Yeah.
The phone network was on a different system. The phone system had its own power supply. It was independent of NYSEG or whoever the utility was that provided your electricity. So, we'll see.
There are other options.
Yeah,
I would suggest.
We will find out. We will eventually find out the hard way that the state and federal governments missed the boat on this one, but then that'll be good because we'll have, after the phone lines are eventually restored, we'll have a lot to gripe about why.
Get a CB radio.
Yeah, well,
or a shortwave radio is even better.
Yeah,
you need a license for that. You need a license, okay? But in times of emergency, you can listen. So those are the two things I would consider, and I definitely have one of them already.
Right. Well, that's good, but again,
you got to have a backup.
Nothing, in my opinion, will ever replace the phone system that we had for several decades. They had a perfectly good, sound, resilient system, and then with the advent of cell service and digital cell service, so now virtually everybody on the planet has a cell phone, and the audio quality is poor in many cases, and the reliability is nothing like it was with the traditional landline network. But that's the price of progress, and as I say, I hope that I'm not around when we learn the hard way that we should have had our phone companies, even though there is a great expense. I understand why the phone companies, Verizon, I believe I don't know if it was over a decade ago, Verizon sold its landline service in New England, I think in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And it turned out to be a true debacle because the entity that took over the landline service didn't know the first thing about what they were doing. And Verizon, I believe, for years has been trying to dump its remaining landline service in New York State, but the Public Service Commission won't let them. If Verizon, I think, had its choice, if they were allowed to shut down the entire landline system tomorrow, they would, because they're not making money on it. So that's what it's about. It's money.
I think you'd have the argument, too, where Indians would say, you know what, you don't need landline or anything. Smoke signals, very reliable.
Yeah, as long as it's the wacky weed. That's what Governor Hochul would say. Do your smoke signals, but only do it using the wacky weed from state licensed shops.
Hazy days, Bob. Thanks for my call.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Yes, you too. 1049 WNBF. More calls are coming up as long as the phone lines work. 607-772-1290. Listening to Binghamton Now on WNBF. 1290 AM, 92.1 FM. Online at WNBF.com. At 10:52, more calls more often. Tom and Endwell, you're on the air.
How you doing today, Bob?
I am well.
I definitely wanted to jump off that last story. The guy had a lot of, great points, good views. Talking about that area in North Carolina, one thing now that time has passed and some of the people that were in it, that survived, were able to speak out. And, what really makes me curious is he's right. You don't get flooding like that on top of mountains. That's highly interesting. The other thing is that I keep hearing over and over is that they had zero warning. Zero. No warning whatsoever of how bad it could get or anything. And I'm still waiting to hear it. I've tried to do some research to see if there was any kind of warning. There was no warning for these people whatsoever. And I find that very interesting.
What do you mean by very interesting? You make it sound like it's the tone of your voice is almost conspiratorial.
Why is everything got to be conspiratorial? When hurricanes come in, they let people know, hey, you need to evacuate. Hey.
Yeah, well, you could find over the course of a year or a decade multiple occasions where serious weather events have happened and people didn't get much, if any, advance warning. It's not unique in this case, if, in fact, it happened.
Bob, it's very unique. We supposedly had the best system in the world to let people know these things.
It may be the best system in the world. It's not a perfect system. Nobody from the federal government or the Weather Service has ever said they have a perfect forecasting system or a perfect warning system.
Bob, you don't miss things like this.
Hey, I know no matter what I say, it's not going to change your belief. So if you think that someone behind the curtains intentionally didn't warn the people in Asheville and some other parts of the South about what was coming, if you think that, you're allowed to think that, even if it's wrong.
Bob, not to that extent. Not for them not to get some kind of sign or warning. That's like a Hurricane 10 barreling toward the coast, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got maybe a fish storm coming in or whatever." No, they would let people know, you need to leave. Like something. All I'm saying, Bob, I'm not on a conspiratorial view because that's your guys' greatest word. All I'm saying is I find it odd that these people aren't saying anything about not being forewarned about this amount of water. And the other thing is, our National Guard and FEMA did not respond fast at all. Dr. Phil was there and showing helicopters from the National Guard and FEMA not even moving. Dr. Phil was part of all the small local planes and helicopters, getting stuff out there. They also had video of an unmarked, looked like a military chopper that came down where all the food was and all the supplies to help these people came down low and blew their stuff all over the place. Like, what was that about? Like, all I'm saying is, like, not everything is a conspiracy. Things happen, and the far left want to just, everything is a conspiracy that doesn't align with them being good. Just like you let the mayor come on, and he's like, there's no, like, steering the clouds.
Right, it's just like I let you come on. Everybody is allowed to come on. So you are listening to a set of talking points. I was monitoring the Fox News channel at various times over the last day or two, and I am amazed. Well, no, not really amazed. Not even surprised. Here we are, less than 2 weeks before the election, so their coverage of the calamities, of course, Helene that happened first and now Milton. Fox News coverage, of course, includes some live shots about what's really happening, and then about it, almost like clockwork, it felt, that every 3.5 minutes, then they'd come on with new misinformation or disinformation in many cases. And it's interesting how most of the guests that Fox was using over the last 24 or 36 or 48 hours, unless they were mayors or governors who were actually part of the disaster zone, they would bring in people and they would make it a point to almost always say Biden and Harris and Biden, as though anything that didn't go in their view perfectly in the disaster response that had something to do with Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Oh, and Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, it's just, it truly amazed me.
Thank you for calling.
I mean, but there it was. There it was. Election day. Just around the corner. It'll be November 5th before you know it. But before the general election takes place, there will be opportunities for early voting in New York State. Joining us now to talk about some of the things you might want to know as early voting approaches is James Walls, the Democratic Election Commissioner in Tioga County. Good morning.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
I am well. How are things?
Oh, going well. We're very busy over here, but we're getting things ready to go by the time early voting starts.
So tell us about early voting. It'll be getting underway before you know it. There will be several days for New Yorkers, again this year, to vote before Election Day.
Yes, so starting in 2019, New York implemented early voting, which is a 9-day period before each election, and it starts the 10th day before the election. So for this election, it's going to start on Saturday, October the 26th, and we'll have early voting every day from there up until Sunday, November the 3rd. If you're a Tioga County resident, we have it most days. It's just 9 to 5 when polls are open. We have 2 days, though, the Monday and Tuesday. That's October 28th and 29th, where we're open from noon to 8 p.m. for early voting. And with early voting, it's really just like voting on Election Day. You come and check in, and you vote your ballot on the voting machine. So it offers an opportunity for anybody who may be unable to get to the polls on Election Day to still cast a ballot on a machine.
One thing people always need to keep in mind, regardless of their county, when it comes to early voting, the early voting is not conducted at your regular polling place. So if you voted, say, last Election Day in November, the place where you would go if you wanted to cast a ballot early this year is different.
That is correct. So, and that in Tioga County, our early voting site is right at our Board of Elections office. On Election Day, people need to vote at their assigned polling location. Okay, so if you're not sure where your assigned polling location is for Election Day, you can always look that up online. The New York State Board of Elections has a voter lookup tool where folks can put in their name and address and find out if they're registered to vote, and it will. If you are registered to vote, it will tell you your polling location as well.
In Tioga County, since early voting became an option, have many residents taken advantage of that? Has there been what has your experience been when it comes to early voting in the last few years since it finally was offered in New York State?
Right. So, well, it really varies depending on the year, but being this year is a presidential election year, we expect a really high turnout with early voting. So Tioga County, we're a pretty small county. We only have about 34,000 registered voters. And in 2020 presidential election, we had over 6,000 people come through for early voting over the course of the 9 days. So that was actually a big help for our Election Day poll workers because it took some of the pressure off then, because that's a significant percentage of the voting population.
For people who aren't registered to vote, there still is time to register. People still have a couple of weeks to register if they aren't currently registered.
That is correct. The deadline to register to vote and be eligible to vote for this election is Saturday, October the 26th. So that's the same day that early voting starts. And we call that the Golden Day. So you can register to vote and vote the same day and have your ballot count. Every other day after that, if you're not registered, you will not be eligible to vote.
Tell me about the effort every year of making sure you have a sufficient number of people to be at every polling place, because I know some years it can be challenging in various counties of New York to find an adequate number of people to make sure that all the polling places are staffed. I understand you're all set for this year, but has it been a bit more challenging over the last few years to line up the people needed at the polling places?
That's true. So with the presidential election year, it's a very high-profile election. There is a lot of attention, so we get more people willing to help out. So it's been easier for us this year to get the people we need, but really every other year it is harder. So a lot of times we end up running short at our poll sites because there's not so much interest in people working the polls. So that's one thing I would like to convey to people. If you are interested in being an election inspector, please commit that time, not just for even years or presidential election years. We need inspectors every year, in the odd year elections as well, for our local elections. Those are just as important.
Is there any other important information that you'd like to convey right now as we get closer and closer to the start of early voting on October 26th and also on the general election day, November 5th?
Yes. So another option for voting, you can vote by mail. There are two options for voting by mail. You can do absentee or an early vote by mail. If you do an early vote by mail application, you do not need an excuse to vote by mail that way. You just fill out an application and we'll get you a ballot for the election. But that will expire at the end of this cycle. Absentee ballots are a little bit different. You need to have a reason to vote by absentee, such as you're not going to be in the county or available, or you're going to be sick. Some folks who are permanently disabled or ill can do a permanent absentee application, in which case we will mail them an absentee ballot for every election moving forward since they submit that application. So if you are someone who's unable to physically make it to the polls, or you'd rather vote by mail, you can do one of those applications, and the deadline to submit an application for that is October the 26th if you're submitting it by mail, or there's an online portal as well through the State Board of Elections website. Or you can do them over the counter at your local Board of Elections up until the day before the election.
If Tioga County residents have any questions or concerns regarding voting this year, what can they do?
The best thing to do is to call the Board of Elections. So the Board of Elections is the trusted source of voting information, okay? So if you have any questions or concerns, just call us. So the Tioga County Board of Elections phone number is 607-687-8261. We'll be happy to help you out with any voting questions that you have.
Are you concerned about the potential for misinformation this year, either before or after the election day?
Yes, so that is a big concern. We're advised by our state partners to try and get ahead of any misinformation. Remind voters that if you want the accurate information when it comes to voting, you need to contact your Board of Elections. There's plenty of online sources. There's foreign bad actors trying to feed misinformation and disinformation to voters and sow distrust in the election system. So if anybody is concerned, please contact your Board of Elections for accurate information.
James Walls, the Democratic Election Commissioner for Tioga County, thanks for joining us. Wish you the best over the next few weeks. And, of course, as always, I know just because Election Day happens November 5th and the polls will close at 9 p.m., that doesn't mean that the job of your office and the people, your staff, that doesn't mean the job is over. That's when some of the most important work actually begins.
That's right.
Wish you the best.
We'll be busy all the way up until Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.
Yep. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
It's 11:20 WNBF. Information for you. 1290 AM, 92.1 FM, online, WNBF.com, and stay connected with Binghamton Now using the free WNBF app. Binghamton Now moving forward with the Friday Festival of Fun. Vinny from Binghamton, good morning. You're on the air.
Oh, hey, Bob. Good morning. I thought I'd call so I could spread more of my hate.
You hate monger. Vinny, you hate monger. Why don't you give up? This isn't hate radio. This is love radio, Vinny.
Well, Bob, I'll address the one who told you about how you treat people differently last week. But I just wanted to say this. I don't know if you listeners, we all know what's going on with this hurricane and Helena down there in North Carolina. But I don't know if you just heard the news. Mike Johnson does not want to come back to pass these funds for the emergency. But he did. He sent his thoughts and prayers to hurricane victims. The Democrats got together Wednesday. More than 60 House Democrats signed a letter urging Johnson to assemble lawmakers to pass an additional funding on top of the last month's stopgap bill, which was $20 billion. The funds were allocated for necessary steps and all that kind of stuff. Now, I want you to keep in mind as I'm talking that you know how slow our government runs, okay? If you want to put a window in a state building, it's going to take about 9 years to put one window in. It just has to go through all this tape and all this other kind of stuff. So FEMA says right now we're okay with what we have, but with these storms, it's going to we're going to need it real quick, because I think there's like another one in the Gulf, or they're watching 2 more with this going on. And the Republicans, not one person from the Republican Party signed this asking for more money. So Johnson didn't seem interested in calling Congress back in session anytime. During his visit to North Carolina, he claimed there was little Congress could do until the storms had passed.
I heard that he said it would take a few weeks to study this.
Well, yeah,
and I'm thinking, it's going to take probably, I would guess it's going to take about 25 or 26 days to study it before Congress can be called back to provide sufficient funding for FEMA and for the Small Business Administration. That's probably about, I estimate that Mike Johnson thinks it's going to take, probably November 6th or so. They should be able to reconvene at about 9 a.m.
Yeah, and later that evening, he goes, this is what he put on X. Our prayers are with the people of Florida tonight as they endure Hurricane Milton.
I see that. I see it's on Twitter. I call it Twitter. You can call it whatever you want. But I bet that was reassuring.
Yeah, and so my question is straight at Trump supporters. You guys should be ticked. Don't you remember what we were talking about? Why don't we take care of our own first? What happened? I bet you if this was Louisiana, they'd have funds and everybody down there if this was Louisiana. But
they'd have one of those, those cannons that shoots T-shirts at the baseball game. They'd have a cannon shooting $100 bills out if it was in his home state.
Yeah, well, Mike, Bob, and again, and if I can address the caller who said that I spread hate. Look, I picked you guys out years ago. You guys do the same old playbook. You did it when Donald Trump, when that kid out there tried to assassinate him. First thing out of Mike Collins, Republican Georgia, the Republican district attorney in Butler County should immediately file charges against Joe Biden for enticing assassination. This is what you guys do. But I will tell you this. I don't hate Trump supporters. But what gets me really close is some of these people, some of these congressmen who sit there with their head up their butts and they know it's wrong and they let it go and they try to normalize it. I don't know if you heard that speech last night from Obama when he was out there in Pittsburgh, but Bob, he basically said, and I'm sorry if she's listening, the lady from Johnson City who called and said, we were never like this. That's what Obama said. He said, when did this become normal in this country? I mean, you've got going down there to Springfield, and it was funny. John One, who called earlier, and he was talking about moving the illegals out and all that kind of stuff. But he said something that reminded me, took me a flashback back to when I was in high school, and he said the boat people. And I remember growing up and I was in high school because I had mentioned this about Springfield and those Haitians that are there, and they have kids that go to school. Bob, I can remember walking in the halls in between class, and it'd be packed, tons of kids. And we had this one young kid that was in there. I think he might have been Vietnamese. But I always remember, boat people. Oh, there's the boat people. All through class. And I remember one time in lunchroom, there was a teacher, had his hand on his back. He had been crying. I can imagine right now those young kids in Springfield, Haitian, working in school, being teased, bullied. Oh, I hear you guys eat cats. I hear you eat dogs. And that's the human part that gets to me.
Yeah, no, kids can be mean. I mean, adults can be mean too, but kids can be really mean with each other. Wonder if Donald Trump's campaign is scoping out a pop-up rally sometime, because he now continues to claim he thinks that he can win New York State. So I'm wondering if he would hold a pop-up rally on East Franklin Street outside that house where that guy who somehow slithered from Texas up to Endicott had been hanging out for a couple of months before he was arrested in front of the Burlington store at the Town Square Mall in Vestal. I wonder if Trump would hold a rally there on East Franklin Street between that house and the railroad tracks.
No, I you know, Bob, at this point, don't care.
Well, I know. I'm just saying because, look, he's going to be in Aurora, Colorado, as you have heard. It's a sold-out rally, and, the claim will persist that the entire city of Aurora has been overrun by a bunch of people in the United States illegally who are gang-affiliated.
Well, I'll tell you.
Which, by the way, is not true, but that makes no difference.
Well, like I said, hopefully, and I'm so sure it's going to happen, November we can turn the channel. And if Kamala Harris pulls this out, which I know she will, I'll call this station that next day. And, Bob, the first thing I'm going to say is we got work to do.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I think it could wind up in a tie, which could be really, really fascinating from a media standpoint. It's 11:30, WNBF Binghamton. Hi, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Bob, this is DJ in Binghamton. Well, it's beautiful out, blue skies, 60 degrees. It is a gorgeous day. What's new in Binghamton, New York with you guys?
Everything is beautiful here in its own way.
It's beautiful?
In its own way.
In its own way? Hey, well, check it out. I don't know if you heard, but the movie about the young man on the come-up in theaters now is The Apprentice, about a young Donald Trump. And it's playing at a couple of theaters around us. Binghamton, and I think Endicott, but I'm not Endicott. What's the other? Vestal, but I'm not sure what I know Binghamton's doing. The Apprentice. It's not about the show, The Apprentice, on NBC. It's about the man. The other one,
The Man and the Myth.
Vindicating Trump. Well, KK's grandmother told her when she was a little girl around 6 years old that this man was going to be president. She said, "Who, Grandma?" And she said, "Donald Trump. He's a businessman here in Queens where we live. He's going to be president someday." And that was like the early 90s, mid-90s.
No wonder the kids had nightmares all these years.
Grandma was right.
Yeah, well, that wasn't nice to do to her grandchild, but...
Well, her grandchild woke me up at 2 in the morning and told me he won, and I didn't believe her grandchild. I said, "You're crazy. Hillary won. Hillary got it."
No, Hillary wasn't destined to win.
Bag.
The FBI director didn't want Hillary to win, so...
FBI director? That got to do with the price of Moxie.
I'm just talking about the way the campaign went.
Well, last night, Robert Joseph, if you were in Binghamton, New York, they had the greatest dinner. The chefs, full right, with baked chicken, which had a crispy crust, and stuffed shells stuffed with cheese and sauce, potatoes at the SUNY Room appreciation dinner for the community. And it was so good, man. They had music, live music. They had ice cream at 7:30. They had Paint the Ice. Have you ever been to a Paint the Ice event, Bobby?
Was that involving drugs?
You take a cup of paint, the color of your choice, and you take a brush. I painted a big blue cross. People painted scriptures on the SUNY Broom ice.
Oh, really?
My sister was a goalie for SUNY Broom one time. I went to see her. She was all decked out in the hockey gear. in the 1970s. I couldn't believe it.
Well, like they say, good times, man. Well, did they have any Chick-fil-A sandwiches?
She went when they called it Broom Tech.
Broom Tech, yeah, I remember they called it Broom Tech. Did they have any Chick-fil-A sandwiches at the big event?
Key Bank. The Key Bank near the Oakdale Commons is going to be Chick-fil-A as soon as the Key Bank exits out, which their contract is up.
Well, so they say. I hope it's open Sundays. That's my hope. Thank you, DJ. If they would open it Sundays. It'd be a tourist attraction. The only location in the chain that's open Sundays. And again, I already have offered them a sufficient cover story because the people of Johnson City are hungry. They're hungry on Sundays especially. And because of the level of hunger in Johnson City, they have decided to stay open 24/7 on Sunday. So they'll be open regular hours, Monday through Saturday, and then starting at midnight, actually 11:59 p.m. Saturday, till 12:01 a.m. Monday, they'll be open with special deals on their trademark sandwiches. All sandwiches at a special price. Some restrictions may apply. It's 11:35 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Karen from Binghamton.
Good morning, Karen. You're on the radio. What's on your mind?
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment on the landline phones. I currently have a landline, and during the last power outage, I did lose my landline.
So my question is it still a traditional real copper wire landline, or have they transitioned it over to something that uses a modem to connect to the phone network?
I honestly don't know. I can only tell you when I lost power, I lost the landline. However, I still think it's beneficial to have one because if something does happen with the cell phones, but the power stays on, you still have your landline, which, keeps you connected to your loved ones. So I will never get rid of my landline.
You're smart. You are smart. That's the smartest advice I've heard all week, is if you have a landline, keep it. If I had a landline, I would keep it. The problem is when I moved to my current house, for some reason, well, I'll tell you the reason someday. For some reason, there was no landline ever hooked up, and in hindsight, that was a poor choice. And now, even if I want a landline, I don't think I can get a real landline, a copper wire.
Right.
I will say, because you lost your phone service during the last power interruption, I do believe you probably have one of those things that the phone company has been shifting its customers over to. But to your point, I have to say,
you're probably right about that.
By the way, the audio quality of your phone is impeccable. I wish every listener had a phone that sounded as good as yours.
Thank you. I am on my landline right now. And one more thing, I have my landline through Spectrum, which is also where I have my Wi-Fi. So if you
okay, well that explains it. So Spectrum doesn't have regular landline. That's why I asked.
Right.
And yes, so it's still, because it's Spectrum, a modem's involved, and that's why if you lose power, and I think they advise people of this ahead of time as you're getting installation, don't count on your, I'm using air quotes now, landline phone to call 911 if the power goes out. You do have to be aware of that.
Right. But I'm still keeping it because I think it's a good idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, to have at least one backup, for everything, you need redundancy.
Yes, absolutely. And I really like your show, and thank you for taking my call, and have a great day.
You too, Karen. Thank you. Again, the phone system used to be simple, and now the phone system is complicated. But that's the way they like it. That's the way. They like it. Make it as complicated as possible, like everything else in the country today. Why make it simple when you can make it so complicated the average person can't figure out what the best choice is? That's how we work in America to maximize our profit every quarter for return to shareholders. I'm kidding. It's not the way it works. We want everybody to have access to everything. 607-772-1290. Bob Joseph with you on WNBF. As the calls continue to flood into our control point, Joe in Owego, you're on the air.
Thank you. I was very happy when someone decided that there were a number of issues along with the border bill that probably should be more closely analyzed. And unfortunately, when the man called in and offered his descriptions, I was distracted, but I did catch the end of it, and I appreciate it. And I think the same thing is true of the green wave, especially with the tax credits, because it seems like the federal government is offering them, the state government is offering them, there's tax exemptions. And what does this amount to in terms of the resources that are related to taxes? If you are paying these out of a tax source, how big a value do you have to come up with these phenomenally huge tax credit numbers? For example, if your tax rate on property may be 8%, how much 8% property tax have you got to spend to cover $150,000 or $150 million in tax credit awards? People need to know what is going on. I don't, and that is why I have asked the number of people I have, and I've gotten 4 responses, none of which have given me much information. But I think the public really should take a long, hard look at the reality of this green or climate change, I'm going to say, phenomenon, for lack of a better term. There are so many sides to it that we do not understand, and yet people are talking about weather. They're not talking about climate. Climate is long-term, weather is short-term. But anyway, if there are people out there who understand the process of awarding tax credits as a stimulus, please call in and share the information. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Joe. 11:43 WNBF. Still time to call before I shut the place down for the weekend. Once it's shut down, I'm not reopening this place till 9 o'clock Monday morning. So if you have something to say, you better get in quickly. Morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where you're calling from?
This is Matt from Binghamton, Dave's nemesis, who he always mentions my name, so I get to call.
Yeah, well, he actually loves you. Anyway, here he told me confidentially. Anyway, so what's on your mind this morning? By the way, he didn't tell me that. Confidentially or otherwise. Just wanted to push his button. So what's on your mind?
Well, a couple things. First of all, one of the things he argued about North Carolina. If you know anything about North Carolina and traveled in the mountains there, I used to go down there every spring when I was in a old-timey band and learn songs from the locals. And those villages or those towns and little tucked away places up in the mountains, there's probably a lot of people that don't hear a lot of things. Second of all, they admitted that, somehow we've got to get better. But when you have such huge storms that we've had in the last, half decade that are bigger than ever, there's going to be problems for sure. Second of all, I listened to the debate last night, Josh Riley and Molinaro, and basically it was very, very interesting. He keeps claiming that Josh Riley argued before the Supreme Court about letting immigrants in. No, what he was arguing about, he clarified, was when Trump decided to rip kids away from their parents, that was the law that he was arguing. Also, Mark Molinaro keeps mentioning 600,000 plus criminals that came across our border. If they know there's 600,000 criminals that came across our border, what has he done as a congressperson to, if they have a list, and they would have to have a list to know that that many came over, what are they doing to round them up? It's an imperfect border for sure, but we all know that the Republicans killed the reform bill that would have made it a much better border. And then, Mike Johnson, all he does is pray for hurricane victims and pray for victims of mass shootings. Let's put the money where it's needed. Let's put the laws where they're needed. And that's my rant before the weekend.
All right. Well, I appreciate your thoughts. Now we'll see if any other viewers have something to say. Thank you. That's Matt from Binghamton, 1146, here at News Radio, WNBF. Who knows? Maybe we'll have no more calls. Probably serves me right for being unduly critical of the phone companies. Oh, look, we have one more call. Maybe it's the phone companies. Hi, is this the phone companies?
No, it's Airport Road Bob, town of Maine, but...
Okay, well, then I'll take your call until we get a call from the phone companies. Morning, Airport Road Bob in the town of Maine. What's on your mind?
It's been a crazy week for you, Bob. I listened to you all week, and the beginning of the week was a little rough. You had some hardcore people giving you... you can hear it in your voice when you come on. It's going to be a great day, and by the end of the day, they wore you down a little bit. But listen, keep plugging. You do a great job. I want to, just make a quick comment on what Joe was saying. I keep harping on the same thing. I'm not a political kind of guy. I don't care whether you're red or you're blue. I'm going to take the facts, and I'm going to vote for the guy that looks like he's going to do what he can for me and my neighbors in my state. And you know what I'm saying. You're in the same boat. But the comment, I would really like to stress that all these hardcore people, and again, before I forget, thank you, Vinny, for the compliment the other day. I try to do what I can. I'm a little abrasive and straightforward sometimes, but at least you know where I'm coming from, and I'm a straight shooter.
Well, and his point was that you do speak passionately about things you care about, and one thing in particular, and that's I think that was notable, and I think we need more of it. Not just say if people are opposed to something, if people support something or whatever, especially on this local show. That's one of the things about having a local talk program. The program's open for any topic. I know frequently we wind up gravitating to presidential politics, and that's to be expected, but there's so much going on in Broome and Tioga counties and the other surrounding counties. I'm really surprised we don't get more people talking about what's going on in their neighborhood.
I agree, and Joe's correct. People got to start paying attention locally. I only got involved in all this, whatever you want to call it, political activism or whatever, for 2 years now against the IDA project. And it's all about the money. The amount of money being spent by the IDAs and how they're going about it is just totally crazy. You can look up any of your old stories, the parking garage with the apartments. They want a 30-year pilot for building luxury apartments. It's crazy, Bob. People can't change the national politics, but they can change their local politics. They can change what's happening in their local areas. And we need more people to get involved, to pay attention to what's going on. Go to meetings or even listen to a Zoom meeting or pay attention to Bob Joseph. Or, I met John Solak a number of times now, and I tease him all the time when I see him that I endeavor to be like him. He's passionate. He goes to these meetings. He brings out all of the corruption or the things that are happening that shouldn't be happening. More people need to stand up and look around and pay attention. This is going to be a huge voting season. Everyone needs to get out to vote. And my last one, please, everybody, give the Mercy House. It's one of the most amazing places in the area. Just 6 more rooms added on will give that many more people the opportunity to pass on to the next life. They're amazing there. You know for a fact. I know for a fact. Bob, have a great weekend. I'll wait to hear from you next week. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Bob. It's 11:50 at WNBF. Email about the phones. Carol from Vestal writes regarding landline phone. I also have a landline. Mine is through Verizon and does still work when the power is out. See, that's critical. That's why I want a landline phone, and I want it to work when the power is out. But I don't think now if I call up the phone company that they would hook up one of those phones. They'd be like, well, we have something that's almost as good. It's like, no, I don't want something almost as good. I want a landline phone, and I want it to keep working when the power goes out. That's why I want it. I'll pay $50 or $70, maybe even $100 a month to have a landline phone that is always going to work, except on those rare occasions when there might be something with the system. But remember when you were a kid, the power could go out, your phone would still work, still could call for help. You didn't have to worry if your phone was sufficiently charged before the power mysteriously disappeared. So Carol writes, she does have her phone through Verizon. It works when the power is out. Spectrum does not have landlines that work without power, and that's why I told them I would not switch to their service. Thanks, Carol from Vestal. Exactly. You find me a service, a phone service that's going to work when the power goes out, and put it in, baby. As I say, I don't think they do that anymore because this is America. We can't afford a good landline system, a network, a reliable network. Now we have to deal with a shoddy and unpredictable national network that has outages that are never explained. Massive outages where thousands or even millions of people might be without phone service, and it just mysteriously comes back on at one point, and there's never an explanation for why it happened or what they'll do to make sure it doesn't happen again. Hi, WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Bruce from Rochester. And what I wanted to say is that back when I sat in your chair 55 years ago, but it happened to be at the Sheraton Inn, companies could only own 7 radio and TV stations. Ever since deregulation and these big companies can own stations all over the place, you got all these stations that are automated radio stations in the closet. They don't even own a microphone. And if an emergency happens, there's nobody answer the phone at the station to put it on the air. And there's been some documented cases of tornado warnings that never made it to the air. But the FCC, Congress just passed a law, and I hope it gets all the way through that. The automakers wanted to get rid of AM radios in cars. They said, the electronics creates interference. But Congress has seen that it's more important to have AM radios in cars and is demanding that cars will forevermore have AM radios no matter what Tesla says.
Yeah, they should have AM radios. And Leon, the guy who runs Tesla, Elon, ought to make sure every Tesla has an AM and FM radio. But make sure the AM works. One of the problems I've seen, whether it's the auto industry or electronics manufacturers, they go out of their way to use absolutely the cheapest components and software for whatever AM side they're doing to intentionally make it sound as bad as possible. When you, Bruce, and I know, AM can sound very good, assuming the transmitter is properly maintained and assuming you have a decent receiver. Anybody who still has GE Super Radio can tell you that even in 2024, AM can sound pretty darn good, but it's not going to sound good at all when you've got companies whether it's the electronics manufacturers or the people in the car industry who are going out of their way to make AM as cheap as possible, even though, and you're talking about cars, look, Teslas aren't cheap, so even if Musk had to spend an extra $6 per unit to make a decent sounding AM radio, he could do it. He doesn't want to.
That's right. So, anyway, appreciate you being on. I listen to you, with the internet, I can listen to you all over the state. It's really cool. So,
it is cool with the technology, and thanks for the bringing back the nostalgia from when WNBF AM, FM, and TV were broadcasting from the Sheraton on Front Street over on the west side.
Yep.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, Bruce.
Thanks. Bye.
11:55 WNBF. Hi, good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from? Hi, Hi, WNBF. You're on the air. Where are you calling from?
I was listening about Benny calling in.
Who is this, Martin? Johnson. Is this Martin from Binghamton?
Yeah.
Hi.
Yes. Hi. I was listening in one ear and listening about Benny. About Mike Johnson. Yeah, an old quote, too heavenly minded to be any earthly good. I mean, I'm all for spirituality and praying, everything else. But, now if that's pure politics, you're trying to make the Democrats look bad. They're not coming back. They care. If Christians are supposed to care about people, he should be rounding up these troops and bringing them back. He should be working vociferously to get these people back. But he's not doing nothing. No, he's smug anyway. He's a smug Christian. There's different types, but he's just too earthly good, too heavenly minded to be any earthly good. That's all I can say.
All right. Well, I appreciate your thought.
And he's smug. He's very smug.
Is he more smug than I?
Oh God, no, Bob, you're not smug. Have a nice weekend.
Hey, thanks, Martin. You too. Thank you. I just needed a little bit of affirmation as we wrap up from what's been really, you look back, we started out Monday morning at 9 o'clock, and true, if you were with us, in the early minutes of the week, it looked like it was going to be a regular hexscape of a week. And yet, through it all, with perseverance and support from the Binghamton Now fanatics, that means fans, we got through it. I know, the naysayers, the negative nabobs of pessimism, they didn't want us to get through it. They want to portray a nation with a crisis. Yeah, we have our challenges. We always will have our challenges. But it's never as bad as some people are trying to portray it right now. It's a lot better. You have it a lot better now than most people on the planet, believe it or not. Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Joseph. I'll be back Monday morning from 9 to noon with Binghamton Now here on WNBF.